Hello, I'm Simon. Welcome back to my workshop. And hot on the heels of having made my quoit set for the garden, I'm going to be making another game. This time it's going to be table hockey. Let's get tinkering. To make this table hockey set, I'm going to be using a piece of this 5mm that's a little bit smaller than 1/4 of an inch ply, which is off the back of an old bookcase, and this pine board, which was a shelf in that bookcase. I haven't quite decided yet how I'm going to make the pucks for the set, but hopefully as I get the board made, I'll get some inspiration and we'll be able to make some pucks as well. The pine board is going to be cut into strips, and this will be used to make the frame of the game board. I've set my thin strip jig to 20mm, and this will be the size of the frame around the board. I'll also be using a homemade featherboard, and both these projects can be found on my channel. Looking at the boards, I've decided that they look a little bit too wide, so I'm going to rip them down the middle. I'm going to use my thin strip jig to do this, which I also have a video on. I cut more of these than strictly necessary, but I have some other projects I want to do with them. I sort them into pieces, the ones with knots and the ones without knots. The ones without knots will be used for the longer parts of the frame, and the ones with knots I'll try and cut round the knots to make the shorter parts of the frame. While I've got the table saw out, I'm tempted to cut the base, but I really need to make the frame first and then cut the base to fit the frame rather than the other way round. For the long part of the frame, I start by trimming the ends and then cut them to length. I use the flag stop to make sure both are the same length. I set my blade to 45 degrees and cut the bevels. Finally, I make the piece that will separate the two halves and also be the goal. First by trimming the end and then cutting the piece to size. I'm using a strap to hold this frame together. It's not a proper framing strap. It's one of these roof box sort of straps that holds your roof box for your car on the ceiling of your garage to keep it out of the way. I no longer have the roof box, but I still have these straps and they seem to work okay. To fit this goal in the right place, I've measured the lengths here, taken off the width of this to work out exactly the distance from here to here that it needs to be. And this is going to be recessed in to give the whole frame a little bit more strength. There's going to be a little recess in here that this will slot into. I set the blade height to half the thickness of the board. So let me explain how I'm going to cut this. I've marked out where I need to cut. It's going to go down like that. This is currently lined up with the blade, and I've got here the thickness of the board that I want to fit. If I take that out and then replace it with this, which is the thickness of the kerf of the blade, and do that, that cut will be at the other end of the groove that I want to cut, and I can then just hog out the middle. And if you use that method, you get perfectly aligned dados. You might remember these spindles from the garden quoit set. Well, I had a few left over, and I think these will make perfect pucks. I can now cut out the goal. I need to route a groove in the back of the frame for the base to sit in, and I'm going to use my flip up router table, which I have a video on, to do that. I've set up my hoover on the back here so that it's set to auto, so the hoover will come on when the router is turned on and it'll turn off when the router is turned off. The feather boards and the fence and the emergency stop button and all of this auto turn on off electronics are all available as separate videos on my channel. I push the pieces through the router to create the rebate. Well, of course, the auto on only works if you actually turn the hoover on at the hoover as well. And now I can measure up for the base. This is pretty much the largest sheet I can cut on this little cabinet saw, and it would be completely impossible without the sliding table. I'm now ready for glue up. Apply some weights and leave it a couple of hours to dry. Followed by a little bit of hand sanding. I was going to paint these, but they have such a lovely grain, I think I'll just use some furniture oil. To remove any dust from the pucks, I use tack cloths, and I then coat the pucks with Danish oil. I sand everything ready for finishing. In hindsight, I should have sanded the base before I glued it onto the frame. I do have an orbital sander, but I'm one of those rare woodworkers that enjoys hand sanding. I was going to glue the goal in place, but because it protrudes above the frame, I thought that by leaving it loose, I'll be able to remove it when I want to pack it away, and it'll pack away a little bit better. All that's left is to add some felt pads to the bottom. I've decided to use 8 because it's quite a large surface area. The felt pads are just there so that I don't scratch the tabletop that this game is played on. Finally, I add the elastic. I'm using the elastic that came with a tent pole repair kit. Do you know those tent poles that have elastic in them so that they don't fall apart when you fold them up? It's a spare piece of elastic from that. It's pretty good elastic. I think it's going to be quite strong, and it's the right sort of dimensions for the pucks that I've got. So I'm going to drill those 4 holes and then fit the elastic. Now the elastic needs to be at the right height. Base is 4mm thick. The pucks are 6.6mm thick. The elastic needs to be in the middle of the puck. So I need to measure up from the base 4mm and then half of the 6.6mm, which is 3.3. So 4 plus 3.3 is 7.3mm, and that's where I need to drill my hole. I can now thread the elastic to complete the build. Well, this has turned out to be a really fun game that even the really young members of my family can play and enjoy. If you've enjoyed this video, then please leave a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, then please subscribe. And I always love replying to your comments, so if you've got any questions or comments, please leave them below. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.